Should I?
Welcome back to Open Line. Talking about guns, gun safety. We have with us Beth Jocelyn Roth of the Safe Tennessee Project. A lot of calls. So let's get back to the phones. Victor. Hello, Victor.
Hey.
Go right ahead.
Yeah. I have something to say about background checks.
Okay.
You have to go to a background check to buy a gun in a gun store or any other place, but in at one of these gun shows, you don't need one, and that's never made sense to me. I've read that a lot of the guns that wind up in places like New York, Chicago, LA, places that are supposedly have very really tight gun restrictions, those guns come from loose restrictions like ours. That's where those guns are coming from. So it just makes sense to me that teachers should have to undergo background checks and waiting periods and all sorts of things at these gun shows. It just makes common sense to me. I don't understand why that isn't law already. That's one thing about the executive orders I agree with.
Okay.
There are a couple of things I don't agree with, but that's one thing I do.
More background checks. And certainly these gun shows, that obviously was part of the federal bill that failed right after Sandy Hook. And some of the concern, I believe, is that individuals want the right to be able to, a farmer, sell a gun to his neighbor or son without having to worry about having to go through a background check. I think that's kind of the concern.
Sure.
And that once you start putting regulations on these personal private sales, those that happen at a gun show, then all these problems ensue. Now, of course, it's been called the gun show loophole. Sometimes people don't like to hear that, but that then opens up the opportunity for transactions to happen without a background check at these gun shows.
Correct.
So how do you, again, Tennessee, pro-gun state, pro-gun legislature, you start talking about the gun show loophole, how does that go over?
Well, again, I would just point back to the polling data that shows that, between 83 and 84% of Tennesseans support background checks for all gun sales, private sales as well. And, to speak about gun shows, I've attended a number of gun shows. The thing is, a lot of the guns that are trading hands at gun shows are going through background checks. If you are a federally licensed firearm, if you have a federally if you're an FFL, okay, which is a federally licensed firearm dealer, you're required to conduct background checks, and they do those. But where the loophole comes into play is, in addition to the people at the tables that are the FFLs that are conducting background checks, there'll also be people just sort of walking around with guns that say for sale, or they'll just sort of be standing around, and you can approach them and ask them if you would, if they're interested in selling their gun to you. And that's where things get sort of dicey, right? Because I could go up to you, I could say I'd like to buy that gun, and we establish a selling price, and you give me the gun and I give you the cash, and that's it. And what you don't know is I may have a protective order against me. I may have just been released from an involuntary period of time at a mental health facility. I may be somebody that has no business with a gun, and I could be a felon, and that's sort of where the loophole part comes into play. And
there was a big effort to change that after Sandy Hook, when you would think there would be more motivation than ever. Right. And it didn't happen.
Well, and I think you brought up a good point, which is that there are some concerns about the idea of, if you're my brother and I want to sell you a gun, should we really have to go through a background check for that? And I think that's one of those areas where we could find middle ground. I mean, I think that there could be caveats in the law that would allow for, immediate family members who know each other to be able to buy and sell guns back and forth, or if we were hunting together and you wanted to borrow my rifle to take a shot, nobody wants to make that illegal. What we're concerned about, is the idea of people who know nothing about each other, nothing about each other's history, buying and selling guns in cash with no record of the sale and no background check.
Let's go to Tony. Hello, Tony.
Hello. Yeah, I keep hearing the same patterns and same scenarios. One day it's smoking, and I don't like smoking. I don't think you ought to smoke. I don't smoke. I don't agree with people smoking. I don't agree with them smoking in public places. It's the same kind of patterns, and now it's guns, and this has been going on and on and on. Make no mistake about it, you're already infringing on people's rights right now. And these were supposed to have been inalienable rights that are not to be infringed upon, period. You don't like it, but, you infringe upon a person who has a mental illness, that they're still American citizens. A felon's still an American citizen. And I'm not defending them. I'm just saying you're already infringing on American people's rights. You've got people who are illegal aliens can pick up a gun anywhere. A criminal can pick up, I'm in a high-end security, and people can pick up a gun anywhere they want to get it, and if they can't get it the way you're talking about, they're going to break in your house and get it. One way or another, if they want to commit a crime and they're desperate or they're mentally ill or whatever the situation, they're going to get a gun and they're going to do what they want to do. And I understand your point, but here's the thing. We talk about our children. We want to protect our children. That's always the last resort when they can't get what they want. Well, we let our children ride down the road in school buses without seatbelts every day. Now, where's the common sense in that? You talk about common sense, go all the way with it. Now, where is the people on the pro-gun law side of this? Where are the people pushing legislation for education in schools?
About guns?
Wait a minute. Where are the people pushing for the advertisements on television to educate people on television? Don't touch a gun if you see a gun, kids. Where is all that? It's non-existent, and that kind of goes to prove what their intentions really are.
So what are their intentions?
Their intentions are to take away guns completely, but they're not going to rest until they get exactly what they want because they're scared.
All right, well, let's talk about that. That's a common... he said it. There it is. Take away all guns. That if you do one small thing, your ultimate goal is to take away all guns and violate Second Amendment. He said it right there. That is the argument. So how do you get past that?
Well, what I would say is that, for starters, I actually am a gun owner. There are other folks in our organization who are gun owners. Again, when you look at a lot of the polls here in the state and even nationally, you see that even gun owners support a lot of the sort of common sense steps that we could take to try and reduce the number of guns that get into the wrong people's hands. Of course, criminals are always going to get guns. Nobody thinks that any law that anybody passes is going to prevent all criminals from ever being able to get their hands on a gun. But why would we want to make it easy for them to get guns, right? I mean, people are going to speed, but we have speed limits. Again, I think that you would find there are a lot of gun owners out there who are sort of the silent majority when it comes to this kind of thing, who are beginning to take a stand. We've had several gun owners reach out to us directly to say we want to get involved. We want to be the voice of the rational gun owner because we agree with these common sense ideas. To speak to the point about the Second Amendment, I mean, we have respect for the Second Amendment, of course. It's in our Constitution. No one is in any way seeking to repeal it. I mean, not only are we not seeking to, it would be impossible to do that, just like it would be impossible to confiscate guns. I mean, that's not even feasible.
But the lack of trust here is what drives this passionate debate. That one small step to legislate some aspect of guns means the real intention is to take away all guns. And so when you jump to that conclusion, then of course the answer is we can't do anything. And that's kind of where we are in the debate. Do you think we'll get past that?
Well, I mean, I think that, it's frustrating for us because it seems that there's sort of this narrative that's been created, okay? And this narrative is anybody who wants to take steps to actually, reduce the number of people who are injured or killed by guns, that is this slippery slope to gun confiscation. Okay, that's a narrative that's out there. I'm also an NRA member, so I get their emails, I get their communications. So I see what's said on the news, and then I get an email a couple of days later, and there's a lot of exaggeration, there's a lot of hyperbole, and quite honestly, I feel like there's fear-mongering, and that's frustrating because that prevents us from being able to have any kind of real dialogue, right? If one side is totally convinced that the other side is trying to come and get their guns. You know, that's not what we want. And, you know, in regards to the Second Amendment, you know, in the Heller decision, right, which was sort of the landmark decision, Scalia, who wrote the majority opinion, he opined that, like most rights, the Second Amendment right is not unlimited. It is not a right to keep and carry any weapon whatsoever in any manner whatsoever and for whatever purpose. For example, concealed weapons prohibitions have been upheld under the amendment or state analogs. The court's opinion should not be taken to cast doubt on longstanding prohibitions on the possession of firearms by felons and the mentally ill, or laws forbidding the carry of firearms in sensitive places such as schools and government buildings, or laws imposing conditions and qualifications on the commercial sale of arms. So, you know, even Justice Scalia, right, who has certainly nobody would describe him as a liberal, but even in his opinion, he said that there are some restrictions, and you know, I mean, I think that's important.
All right, let's go to Jim. Hello, Jim.
Hey guys, how y'all doing tonight?
Doing well. What's on your mind?
Well, I just have a comment. I can't believe after all them little kids were massacred up in Sandy Hook Elementary that I was never more ashamed of being an American when Congress did not pass any new legislature to prohibit people like that nutcase from getting a gun. Every year that goes by, it just breaks my heart. And what President Obama has tried to do is just slow it down. He's not trying to take anybody's guns away from them. He just doesn't want the nutcases getting the guns. And I don't understand how any American that has a lick of sense would not support something like that. Of course, Congress is bought and paid for by the NRA. Let's face it. These guys contribute millions of dollars to get these guys elected, and they're not going to support any law that prohibits people from buying guns.
All right, let's talk about the NRA, and thank you for your call. You go up to the Tennessee legislature and advocate on behalf of Safe Tennessee, gun safety.
Right.
And you're up against the NRA.
Right.
A hugely powerful lobby.
Right.
What do you see happening? How optimistic are you that you can really get something done in the face of that kind of opposition?
Well, I'm optimistic because I feel like we're on the right side of this issue, and I have to be optimistic about that. It's hard, and we definitely are up against serious opposition. However, I do feel that the country's attitude about this issue is beginning to change, and I think we're even seeing that here in the state. I think that people have reached a tipping point. I mean, we've seen so many of these mass shootings that are on that dominate the news cycle. But then, every night when you turn on, the nightly news, News Channel 5 at 6 and 10, oftentimes, the first 3 or 4 stories are about shootings. And I think, people have gotten to a point where they want to see something done. And again, there's not a one-size-fits-all solution to this problem, but any steps that we can take that can reduce those numbers, I think people want to see that. And so what we're hoping is that, again, looking at the number of Tennesseans who support these common sense measures, going to these legislators and saying, why are you not voting the way that your constituents want you to vote?
What do you think? Is it, because obviously, we see these polls,
right,
and there appears to be support, but at the same time, lawmakers, what is it? Is it the NRA and the money the NRA gives, in your opinion, or are the polls off? How could lawmakers be misrepresenting their voters that much?
Well, my feeling, I mean, just my personal feeling is that a lot of people who are kind of in the middle of the road, who support common sense gun safety measures, common sense gun law reform, you know, they support those things, but, you know, maybe it's not their passion, okay? You know, they're getting up, they're taking their kids to school, they're going to work every day, they're coming home, they're cooking their dinner, they're helping their kids with their homework, and they're going to bed, okay? They're not waking up every day thinking about this issue. Whereas I feel like on the other side of the issue, you know, people are super passionate about it. And so those folks, you know, they make a lot of phone calls and they go and visit their legislator and they send a lot of emails. And so I feel like, you know, there's sort of you know, it's a little bit lopsided, maybe, the amount of feedback that the legislators are getting. And, you know, the fact of the matter is...
But it's a fact, too. When you take a stand against the gun lobby, a lot of times those people have lost.
Well, absolutely. I mean, you can look at Deborah Maggott, for example, and, you know, to this day, you know, legislators will tell you, not always on the record, but they will tell you that they fear being Maggotted. That is actually a verb that is used at the legislature, and basically what that means is, you know, it's not so much the amount of money that they donate to you, it's the amount of money that they would donate to someone to run against you. And, you know, legislators are politicians and they want to stay in office, and that's understandable, and they are fearful of getting on the wrong side of the gun lobby. You know, and that's unfortunate. It's unfortunate for people like me because, you know, we don't have hundreds of thousands of dollars, nor would we ever want to use any money to try and influence someone to vote a certain way. But it definitely puts us at a significant disadvantage trying to fight that. But again, you know, we use facts, we look at data, we look at what's working in other states. You know, we talk to prosecutors, we talk to law enforcement, and we try and figure out ways that would be, you know, that would be useful, that could actually help you know, reduce the number of people that are hurt and injured every year.
All right, we have to take a break. Then we'll take more calls. Take a break. Be back right after this.